Hi, everybody. Welcome to another seminar with the New Jersey STEM Pathways Network. My name is Kim Case. I am Executive Director of the Research and Development Council of New Jersey and manager for the New Jersey STEM Pathways Network. This seminar is titled Leadership in Crisis. We're quite excited to bring together some experts from our ecosystems to talk about the work that they've been doing since the pandemic and really highlighting some of the challenges they've faced and then some of the problem solving that they've done to combat these challenges. We can go into the next slide. I just want to give a quick update on what the New Jersey STEM Pathways Network is. For those that don't know who are on the call, we are a strategic public-private alliance looking at STEM from a cradle to career pathways perspective. We started out of the Office of Higher Education back in 2014 under the lovely Rochelle Hendricks, and we now are sitting within the Research and Development Council and are thankful to our funders, the Overdeck Family Foundation. I just want to do a couple of announcements. The next slide is around New Jersey STEM Month. I have one of my fearless colleagues supporting today's seminar, Shirley Guzman, who's been doing an incredible amount of work to support New Jersey STEM Month. That will be in March. It's in March of every year here in New Jersey, and I encourage everyone to participate as much as or as little as they can. If you go to the STEM Pathways Network website, njstempathways.org/njstemmonth, you will see all of the resources available to you. We are in the process of accepting mini grant nominations, our virtual STEM showcase nominations, which we send out to all of our policymakers here in New Jersey, and also nominations for STEM Month awards. I just want to do one quick plug for two of our seminars that are coming up next week. If we go to the next slide, thank you, Shirley. One on Tuesday is going to be very interesting. It's with the Department of Health. It's called Curbing COVID, and we are going to go through the contact tracing process and also the vaccination launch here in New Jersey. I encourage people to join us if they can. It's from 4 to 5, and there's a registration link here in the slide, which we will be sending out afterwards. We also have a New Jersey STEM Month seminar on Thursday from noon to 1 p.m. And that's going to highlight some of our former STEM Month participants and the work that they've done to support New Jersey STEM Month. So that could give you some ideas on how you can participate. So we're going to move right into our first presenter. We have Ralph here from HSMC, the Hunterdon, Somerset, and Mercer County STEM Learning Ecosystem. He is the supervisor of technology at Flemington Raritan School District. He has really been a vocal advocate for STEM education and the role that technology plays in it for quite some time now. So I'm going to turn it over to Ralph.
Thanks, Kim, for the warm welcome. So I'm not going to read everything on all the slides, obviously, but I am going to walk through a little bit of the background of what Flemington Raritan Regional School District went through when the pandemic hit and we went to all virtual learning and then now to hybrid learning. Some of the strategies we used, some of the successes that we found and shared with other districts, and some things that you may be able to carry forward into your district organization to try to close that digital divide that we know is all too prevalent in our school districts. Go to the next slide, thanks. So there's 4 areas I'm going to take us through: where we were as a district before the pandemic, so pre-March 2020, how we went into our all virtual rollout, some of the pitfalls we found, some of the successes that we had, what we did with funding in order to try to close that divide and get our hands on devices and means of connecting students to the internet, and where we are currently and where we're headed. So pre-March. So just a little background on the Flemington Raritan Regional School District. We are a K-8 district. We're comprised of 6 schools, 4 elementaries, 1 intermediate, 1 middle. We have about 3,079 students and about 328 classroom teachers. Some of the additional statistics you'll see below are all taken from the National Center for Education Statistics and just gives a little bit of an insight into the population that we serve within the Flemington Raritan School District. So prior to March, we were a one-to-one program in grades 3 to 8 with the use of Chromebooks. That was something that was started about 5 years prior, and the district had maintained and supported that program. In grades 3 and 4, the Chromebooks would stay at school for school use only. Grades 5 to 8, they would go home. We were about a 1 to 10 ratio in grades K to 2, and those were with iPads. And our home connectivity, this was a major thing that we had never really thought about because we had never really had to think about it. It was the big unknown that really came to light when we had to flip to all virtual learning and figure out what we were going to do to support the students to be able to attend to their daily lessons. So Flemington, our internet service providers are Xfinity, CenturyLink. According to their data, we have about 98.6% of our district that is covered with 25 megabits per second service. And again, the number of families without reliable internet access was the big unknown prior to us having to move to all virtual learning. Obviously, with virtual learning, there was a huge reliance on home internet access and stable connection, and that's when we started to notice that there was a need for the district to step in to try to fill in some of those gaps and find best ways to make sure that every student could get on to get to their learning. So virtual rollout, I called it fast and furious because we started discussing the possibility of shutting down on the 13th of March, and by the 15th of March, we were all virtual. So this was something that was kudos to the technicians that work for my department in the district. Within the course of about 2 days, they were able to get everything ready to go, up and running. And I think during the course of those 3 days, we slept for probably 2 to 3 hours a night to try to get everything rolled out. We deployed close to 2,000 devices in 3 days. The student parent resources, we had developed some academy classes that we ran at night for the parents. We had online resource guides that we created both for students and for teachers and parents. And we also had direct email and phones service that we have still in place for parents to be able to call into the district or email to get a technician to help them navigate through whatever tech problems they're having. Some of the surveys that went out were connectivity status, and also because we were looking to get our hands on every device we could to try to get a device into every child's hands, we had optional give back programs for families that were fortunate enough to have another device in their home. We did ask them if you could please turn in the device this district had issued. Some of the resources we offered to staff were PD classes and some online resource guides, which were ever evolving and continue to this day to try to support as we are now in hybrid and pivoting to the next chapters of where we are. So we deployed, like I said, close to 2,000 devices in 3 days. Some of the devices were too old, and that was an error that we quickly realized that yes, they had an iPad or they had a Chromebook, but because it was 4, 5, 6 years old, it couldn't support the apps that we were relying on. It couldn't support the programs we needed it to use. So students would go to launch Zoom and they would go to launch Seesaw or Google Classroom and the entire thing would freeze or shut down, or they would just drop the call entirely. So we had to really start to get creative with what we were going to do to get back those devices that just were too old to support, and how were we going to get reliable devices into the hands of these students. And that's where we had parents giving back their devices, staff members who had additional devices were giving back devices. We started pulling devices out of every place we could possibly think of. So we had some that were designated just for in-district testing for different programs. We had some in the media centers, and we really went through every closet, drawer, everything we could think of within the district to try to get our hands on as many devices we could. Unfortunately, even with all of those efforts, we did not have enough to go one-to-one for all the students. So it was a struggle for quite a bit of time, where kindergarten, pre-K students did not receive a one-to-one device until just this past month. And that was really due to global back orders. We knew we needed to order more devices. We were fortunate enough to receive some CARES Act money, Digital Guide grant. However, even putting in those orders and begging and pleading and trying to call every rep that we knew, the global demand was so high, and due to the pandemic, the factories had really screeched to a halt with production. So we were in a queue waiting for months before we could get our hands on those devices. So it did become quite a struggle to try to find ways to have students be able to attend virtual learning. So it really was kudos to the staff to step up and find creative ways of not having it only be online learning. So survey to the parents, we found about 10% of the families had unreliable internet access, a little bit over 8% that did not have access at all were able to secure access through Comcast Internet Essentials program, which is a subsidized program where it's $9.99 a month for internet service. And then we had just shy of 2% of families who needed additional support from the district through a Verizon Jetpack. This worked with cellular connection, and we were able to get more students connected with this. This was ever evolving though. We had some families who came forward right away and said, yes, we need some support. What can we do? We don't have internet. We don't have reliable internet. And then we had some families where we really didn't know what their status was until we started to see that students weren't attending class. And that's when we started working with doing wellness checks and reaching out to families directly to check on what was their status and how were they doing and what could we do as a district to support them. We relied heavily on some of our interpreters as well to try to bridge that barrier to be able to find the best means of supporting each of our learners. So with that in tandem, we knew that we were going to have to put in place some additional supports for these families and for staff members, because a lot of this was brand new. We went from learning obviously in the classroom every day to now we're 100% remote and we're going to rely on these new apps or programs. And without some additional support and training, people were very confused as to how to use them or what the expectation for their use was. So we had academy classes. We launched a series of night classes for parents to be able to attend to learn what the apps were, what the learning platforms were, how they were being utilized. We offered those both in English and Spanish. They were recorded, placed on the district website, also sent out, via messenger blast to all of the families in the community. And that way we had an additional means of providing that PD, that professional development for those parents who now were the advocates and educators of their child while they were home. The platforms that we used, we decided as a district we needed to be consistent. We couldn't have as many come into play as we normally would when we were in class, when we were in person, where teachers might have the ability to say, well, I really want to use this program in my class, it works well for my students, because we realized very quickly before we rolled this out that we needed consistency to reduce that anxiety and to have that clear expectation for learning and have a way to support everybody without having to bounce between 5, 6, 7 different programs or learning applications. So the district adopted Zoom as our means of communication, and Seesaw and Google Classroom became the learning platform. Seesaw at the K2 level and Google Classroom for 3 to 8. In addition to that, we put together a district website dedicated to online resources, how-to videos, tutorials. Teachers started creating these on their own because they realized my kids need this support or the parents need these supports. And they were very, very willing to share out those resources. And we put together a pretty robust website that is constantly being updated. So that way, as we roll through this, the resources are current and any changes that are made to the programs, they're there for everybody to get a hold of. We also put together a district email and phone that was dedicated for tech support. That's manned Monday to Friday from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Oop, my lights just shut off. No, maybe I don't know. Maybe they'll come back on, maybe they won't. All right, Shirley, if we go to the next slide. So all of that was enough for anybody to contend with, but then the ever plaguing problem of where do we get the money to do this came into play, which is always at the table. So we did have our district budget for technology. We had planned for a quote unquote normal year, as every district I'm sure did, not expecting this to come down the line. So we had to get strategic with our district funds. We reallocated some of the money that we had slated for other projects, reallocated some of the budgetary funds to try to get our hands on as many devices as we could and pay for these subscription programs that were now a necessity for online learning. Thankfully, like I said, we were recipients of Digital Divide CARES Act funding, which did help to offset some of those costs that the taxpayers would be feeling directly or trying to rely only on our district budget. Another part of it was contract negotiations with our vendors, and I'll get a little bit further into that on the next slide. So we, like I said, realized we needed some Verizon Jetpacks. We looked into a bunch of different ways to provide internet for families who did not have their own reliable service and could not afford to take out a service plan. We looked at everything from Wi-Fi buses that were going to possibly roam around the district and park in strategic areas, to working in tandem with local libraries, to you name it. I think we probably investigated it before realizing probably the easiest and most efficient way would be to hand out jetpacks to families who needed them. So we went to our Verizon rep. We use Verizon for our cellular service, and they gave us an initial price, which was a lot higher than we were anticipating, and it was a lot higher than the district really could support. So we had several meetings. We decided, and a lot of this credit goes directly to our superintendent, that we weren't going to take the first offer as our last offer. So we went back to the table multiple times with our regional reps. Those got bumped up to state level reps, which got bumped up to national reps. We got on calls with our US representatives. Representative Malinowski was a huge advocate that helped push this along and open up those doors for conversations. And I have to give credit back to Verizon as well. They started getting creative as well to try to work with us of how can we maximize the funds that we do have available to really have the greatest impact for the students that need these additional supports. The way we finally landed on this was we got a new lowered cost through a distance learning data plan, which meant we were actually able to piggyback off of the Georgia Department of Education's negotiated contract with Verizon. So they had a lower rate. Every state negotiates their own contract rates, and sometimes some states, because of the way their laws are written or their negotiation, are able to get a different rate. And Georgia ended up having a much lower rate than we initially had been offered in New Jersey. So through this distance learning data plan, we were able to piggyback off of their data rate and take advantage of that lowered price. So current status, where we are and where are we going? As of December, like I said, we are now fully one-to-one. We have received our last shipment about mid-December, and thankfully our district is now one-to-one. I know this is not the norm across the state or across the country, and that is a significant problem that we are still going to have to continue to battle with. The items that I'm sharing is not going to obviously be a solution for all and would not work in every district, but some of the creative solutions could be something applicable for a district that is working with a provider that they have a plan that might be higher than what they're anticipating or can afford. You know, getting creative, like piggybacking off of another state's contract, was something we hadn't initially thought of, but because of perseverance of going back to the table multiple times, we were able to come up with that. We have noticed as the pandemic has, continued on, that there has been an increase for additional support from the district. Families that had internet before, due to financial hardships, were no longer able to continue to have their own independent plan. So the district is stepping in to fill in those gaps to ensure that those students don't drop off of their virtual learning. And that's because we are in constant communication with our staff members and with the families and community. We have a weekly digest that goes out to staff for additional supports, and there are reminders in there consistently asking for a pulse on their classes. Let us know if you know of a student who's not able to attend or who hasn't come to class for a few days, and then we do those wellness checks again. So we look into what is the reason behind it and what can the district do to support those students. There are weekly letters that come from the superintendent out to the families, again, putting out surveys or putting out additional resources and information for us to really have a true, as comprehensive as possible gauge on where these students are and what we can do as a district. It is not a perfect plan. There are things we're learning every day. We're improving what we're doing and trying to always stay kind of a step ahead of things. But I do think that we've done a pretty solid job of trying to think of ways that are a little bit out of the box, try to think of ways that we can support all of our students and families, and consistently check in with them, consistently keep a pulse on that, because it's one thing to have that initial set of data, but once a month goes by, or now we're approaching a year, it's a very different circumstance, and everybody's lives have been altered and continue to be changed by this. So having that constant open communication has been invaluable for us. So we're going to continue to budget for our one-to-one program moving forward. We're continuing our support to try to close that digital divide. Continued, now that we know it's an option, to look at vendor negotiations, to look at those contracts that we do have and see, is there a way for us to get creative and try to maximize those funds. The weekly digest will continue, as well as the support and communication with the parents and community. And that is it. That's my email address there. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, share out any of the resources we've developed or we've stumbled upon through this process. So feel free to reach out with any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ralph. Definitely, you guys can use the question box moving forward, and we're going to just do questions at the end in case maybe some of your questions are applicable to all of our panelists. I also just, I think Ralph did this as I think he probably would from a very technical perspective of how he managed the logistics behind it, but there was a lot of passion and advocacy from the team at Flemington Raritan to really make sure that the students had everything they needed. And I also just shout out, I know Ralph mentioned some of the players, but Kim Smith over at Comcast was a huge partner in that process and really was able to bring several good players to the table to resolve the issues that were being faced by Flemington Raritan. And I'm sure they worked with many school districts. Okay, let's move to the next slide. We're going to go to our next presentation. So next we're moving to Pavi. Pavi is the founder, creator of Mind Bites. And it's a program that she runs not only in New Jersey, but in other states as well. I'm going to give you the perspective of somebody who was not working as a district representative and how she managed to deal with COVID in her programming. So let's go to Pavi.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you all for joining me for this topic. First, I would like to tell you all a little bit about ourselves and what we do. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit about us. So we create enrichment. We create and offer enrichment programs for wholesome skill development. So every program we create and design is to help the children to bring out their creativity, improving their comprehensional skills and communication skills, and build confidence. So we not only help children utilize these skills to express themselves, but also provide an avenue to extend their work beyond their classroom. So every single program works on this philosophy for us. So we also offer learning ideas, help develop workshops and curriculum for our partners. To give you an idea, we work around 500 plus students a year, including after school, summer programs and workshops. Next slide, please. So this is our mission statement. I'm just not going to read about it, but it is to make, for us, we have to provide that enrichment learning a fun process, not just a fun process, but also to strengthen their skills. Next slide, please. This slide, our partners include various school districts, libraries, universities, summer camp programs, providers, employers, daycare centers, and nonprofit institutions such as the Family Success Centers, etc. We offer programs as after-school programs, workshops, summer camps in both in New Jersey and in North Carolina. Due to this COVID, and our virtual presence have increased, and we have students from Dallas, Texas, and Boston, Massachusetts as well. Next slide, please. These are some of our list of our, this slide just shows list of some of our partners who we work with. This COVID has not given just for us to be more innovative and creative, but also new partners on the board as well, like Lemelson, MIT, and the Parent Academy, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. This is the partial list of programs we offer. Some of them you don't, I mean, this is just, on the left-hand side is purely an after-school program. So we do, in the after-school space, we do logic, STEM, enriched language arts, math, and foundational programs. The other two columns are some of our summer programs, but few things that you will not see are there. The summer programs on building foundational skills for high school students in biology, math, so on and so forth. We also introduced robotics and machine learning this year, fashion design, etc. So next, please. We offer all our programs in some adopted formats and ideas to parents, teachers, and students. Next slide, please. So when COVID hit us, these were some of the thoughts that was going through our minds. We had naturally the after school programs. We had a lot of workshops and summer programs lined up, new partnerships lined up. We had some committed STEM month workshops that were going on. How do we do all of this, keeping in fact that what being mindful of what is being best working for us? So we established in 2011. So for all these 10 years, what has worked best for us is the learning experience that we give our students. So the thought we had was, how can we continue giving the same experience for our students? And it's an after school space, and the learning process to go on. How can we make our resources and material accessible to these parents, and how we can provide tech help? So there were so many thoughts going in our minds, but the goal was very simple. We have to ensure that the learning process is going on. Along with that, we should have engaged learners, and more importantly, promote the collaboration amongst them as we used to do in in-person classes. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about the four pillars again. The first stop is learning. So I'm not going through every points that I've just mentioned here. We did it separately. First of all, we broke down grades pre-K to 2, grades 3 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 12, what we did in after school programs, what we did in workshops, and how we handled summer programs. So we got to, as mentioned, we did some of our workshops for teachers across America on invention education with partnership with Lemels and MIT, parents on how they can keep up the learning going on for their young children at home with Parent Academy, and to students in form of our after school and summer programs. So how did we make this learning happen? Whether we did workshops for parents or teachers or students, 3 things helped us. Number 1, we prepared ahead of time. So we wanted the learning to continue the same way. We were clear about that. So we prepared very well. We prepared our materials. We collected all the manipulatives, and we did our workshops for the teachers, for the parents online on how to, on educating them. So we made sure that every student had those resources. We gave the printouts ahead of time. We got a lot of subscriptions for the students online, as well as printed digital if they don't have that resource. So we made sure that we actually planned ahead of time and collected all the resources and being made available. So we with that, in fact, we introduced robotics and machine learning as the first time. We chose COVID to be the first season to launch it, but we shipped everything. We shipped all the equipments, and most importantly, we were very creative in just using things at home. So you will see in a couple of slides further down some of the pictures that that how we have used materials at home. The second thing that that supported that earlier thing was we experimented a lot with supplies and what we are going to use. So time was very minimal. So as I think Ralph was saying, it left us with very few hours of sleep, in experimenting what will work, especially for different grade levels as we are talking about. And this was also the time where we found help. We heard help from a lot of high school students in supporting their classroom education as well as SAT classes. So for the first time, we have never offered SAT classes, but we are just doing a pilot of, just because we worked one-on-one with some of the students, it just worked really well. And, we are now doing a pilot class. So preparation ahead of time really helped us. That's number 1. Number 2 is training the teachers as well to be more creative and more open. So we all had to acknowledge that we don't know everything. We have to learn constantly. We have to be open for feedback. So we trained the teachers with that mindset, and we wanted them to be more creative in terms of how they can creatively, like for example, what are the creative ways in which the students can, present their projects. Not everybody can have, like as Ralph was saying, like not everybody had like super high systems. So Flipgrid didn't work for some people. So how can they creatively express their projects or their learning through some of it? And the third thing that we really still continue to do is quick responsive actions, taking this, bouncing back from learning what is not working and making it work every day. It's a constant learning that we are doing, and constant checking on what's working and what's not working and tweaking them and bouncing back quick. Next slide, please. The second component was engagement. So once we got that learning component set, ensure that whatever we were supposed to teach them in different formats were going on, how do we create that engagement in children and in students and parents and teachers and any form of offerings that we do. So on engagement side of things, we all know breakout room works very well. But we also did something called chat times and Zoom names. So just to be more creative, we see that when there are some dips in children's, and when students are not attentive, we call it as a chat time, and we came up with a very nice ringtone, or like students decide how they want to announce a chat time. And when I say chat time, they'll kind of make that sound. Some were very creative on, we allowed them to have Zoom names. So kids argued on different Zoom names, and it was a little bit of a fun, especially for the younger grades, to keep it going. For middle school and high school, we had a lot of games, we had to pull out of our sleeves. Really quick and easy games. It could be something as simple as hangman to at the beginning of the classes, middle of the class when the interest is dipping down. But also some games that we, one of the game I just wanted to share really quick is splitting the story. We split the Cinderella story into 10 pieces. And whenever, we suddenly, when we feel that there is no lack of attention, we just gave these 10 pieces randomly to the 10 students in the breakout room. And they have to work within themselves to order the story from 1 to 10. So it was a little way of, they know the story, they just have to find out who has what piece. And then, and we promoted a lot of integrated learning. We always promote that from even in class sessions, we promote that. And we always see the STEM as we can include STEM in language arts and math, and everything is integrated. So we always do those kind of projects. But we had to bring it a little early on. We usually do it a little bit of in March and April. Summer programs are always packed with enrichment activities in the afternoons for the students. But we had to bring it a little bit early on so that they kind of, it keeps their engagement levels going on. And the creative ways to present actually motivated them. Next slide, please. So lastly, on the collaboration point, so 3 points that I would like to highlight again from this slide. Agreed that breakout room really helped in the engagement piece, but shuffling the kids every time actually, when they were sent to the breakout room, actually helped in promoting collaboration because they were not with the same same students, the same group of students. I would like to just play a video for you for a minute. These are just first grade students solving math problems together. The boy, when he started the virtual learning, was very, very shy. He didn't want to go, sorry. I think the audio is muted, I think. Sorry.
So that's 3. Of course. And 10 minus 2 equals 8. Equals 8. And minus 3. Of course it's 7. 7. Okay. So 9 minus 3. 1, 2, 3 equals 6.
So why I really like this video particularly was, this boy was initially very shy and nervous, especially in the virtual, when we were doing virtual classes, he was really shy. But he turned around. You can see that he's comfortably talking with the other student, and especially, going through her same tune in the way she was answering, he was trying to adopt that kind of tune to answer too. So it's just so much of so good to see how they are working together, and we shuffle the partners each time. The second thing we introduced is something called I Learned Something New, a badging system, where the kids can actually share what they learned new. It can be anything as simple as some new tools or new ways when they were doing some projects. It's whether it could be some new technology they learned or new words they learned. It doesn't matter what they learned, but it's something called I Learned Something New. So this actually boosted confidence for kids, even who were, initially was not willing to share, but they warmed up to the idea. And we see that they are much more, speaking, and, they're collaborating with each other because they find common interests. They found that, oh, I also learned this. I also did something. I saw this news, or, and especially we do a lot of current news with our middle school and high school students. So this kind of helped us there as well. Lastly, we included a component where the students can give feedback on each other's project. We all know that we've been doing it in class, but at this time, they have to include what they can do better, and what would there be, what are their suggestions. It's not about just giving the feedback, but also helping them to make their feedback a realistic one. So what they can do in terms of, they can do as suggestions. So these 3 points helped us, are helping us in promoting collaboration amongst our students. Next slide, please. These are some of this. So following is some of the pictures that you would see. And as I mentioned, we use things at home for projects and workshops. So whether it's the numerical literacy, we use Cheerios, and we have we gave a small whiteboard. A lot of times when the students actually show their paper, we are not able to clearly see them. So we have to make sure that they actually bring those paper and closer to the camera and show us. So what we did was we gave them a small whiteboard. So you would see in the far right-hand corner where they are writing with the mark. So we gave them a marker, special markers, colors, so that they can use it and they can write it and show it to us. So these are, so that it's much more clearer when the teachers are able to see their work. We want the students to just use computer as a medium to just see the teachers and follow the instructions. Everything else we wanted them to write. We wanted them to still have those critical skills going through when they are learning, their hands-on, minds-on experience. Yeah, so it was more like, we templatized as much as we can, and in how we want to approach this work. The far below is where the kids actually record a video and send it to us. It doesn't have to be uploaded, but we can share it, and we provided a forum where we can provide feedback. The kids who are not comfortable, they created a prototype of robots and they can explain. So it's a language arts class, but we talk about STEM all the time too. Next slide, please. So this is another example where, after reading an article on different houses and architecture, the students were given an option to use the facts they learned as a source source for their inspiration, and build their own houses or mansions or etc. So they built a tree house, they built a mansion, they built a beautiful home, they built models of it, and they built a brochure. So it's not about anything else, but this is a way of presenting, where they created a brochure explaining their home and how they can do it. So we, the kids really enjoyed this process. And it's again a writing skill. So, all the skills are going into place, and yet making them more creative and engaged. Next slide, please. Another example, above pictures show 2 kids working in our programming classes, working on a project together. And on the far right-hand side is a comic presentation by a student. where they were given a personal narrative, and hers was how she can use her power to solve a global warming. She wrote a narrative, but she felt that she can present it through a comic. So this was her presentation. And below is an example on a scholastic article. As you can see, water waste is on how food is getting wasted today and how it's causing a global problem. So we gave the students a project to find out how much food is getting wasted at their homes. So kids went on, it created a little bit of a realization for a lot of parents, because the kids went on with a survey to find out what type of food is getting wasted. And they found that some of them found that mainly there were a lot of uncooked items that got wasted. And they made a chart, like you can see a chart hanging. It's right on the pantry door. So the parents are saying that, it's like a little reminder for us every day. And, some said that they want to build a robot, which will actually be on the bin, and it will monitor what food it's been wasted, so that it will kind of read the data. So it's amazing to see how they can think about like integrating all of these. And it will alert them that this food are getting wasted. Another one came up with an app, so we used MIT Inventor, and we really did not actually made students choose something or the other. We just told the students, these are the tools, if you want you can explore, and that was part of making them learn some things by themselves. But this was interesting because they actually came up with an app that can go on your pantry, and it will not only measure what food is getting taken, like mostly consumed, but also the wellness aspect of it. So they found that in their family members are eating a lot of like junk at this time, and they thought that they can put an app saying that how are you feeling today and what type of food are going to eat now. So it kind of tricks their consciousness. So kids are very creative in coming up with these solutions. Next slide, please. So how are we doing? As always, we thought we'll evaluate ourselves. So we asked the parents. Majority of them, 90% of the families gave us a rating 8 and above on how we are doing on our virtual programs. And some of those are testimonials that we have got from them. And we are constantly, as I said, like one thing that we are trying to do is constantly evaluating ourselves and seeing what is working and what's not working. And parents, one of the things that also is happening is parents wanted to continue some of the summer programs during the weekends also. They wanted the learning to be continued, and they find more time. And then students who are in the after school programs, I always say it's a byproduct. It's not we don't aim for making them to shine in testing. It just happens. But 55% of the students have tested. This was surprising at this time where we are talking about gaps in the learning and the learning loss. Our 55% of the students actually tested above the grade level, both in math and language arts. So at this time, I can proudly say that we have become partners for teachers and parents to keep the learning going on after school. And as being part of the STEM ecosystem, it also gives us an opportunities to share some of our best practices and constantly learn from each other on what works and what not works. So with that, I really thank you for this opportunity and having me talk about this topic. Thank you. That's my email address.
Great, thank you so much, Pavi. We again, we can do some questions at the end. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box, or you can save them and we'll unmute people towards the end. We have our closer now, Maku Etta, who is the Senior Project Lead for the New York STEAM Coalition. She's been working in this field in terms of education, research, and youth development for 10 years, so a decade. And for me, excitingly, she is a 2-time Rutgers graduate, which I am as well. So we'll have Maku.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Well, thank you, Kim. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the coalition and our 50 great partners and all the work that we've been doing Since the launch, next slide, please. Since the launch of the ecosystem in 2016, we've really focused on two broad areas. One is really in the area of STEAM educational and workforce opportunities for our almost 40,000 K through 12 learners within our city. The coalition supports the alignment of STEAM in school and out of school time programs. We look at effective kind of integrated teaching strategies in support with our educators, and we provide workforce exploration opportunities for our students, which I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into in terms of speaking about one of our virtual programs that just launched in September that really touches on exposing our learners to more workforce and STEAM career opportunities. The coalition, we're excited that we're able to provide direct funding to some of our schools through a partnership with our local foundations and lead professional development opportunities for our educators. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about the Bridges to STEAM Careers program. This is an effort that's has been in discussion for at least over a year now. We started to talk about it with our district partners and some of our school partners, where we wanted to get a sense of how can we help expose more of our learners to career and workforce opportunities in the realm of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Ironically, prior to the COVID pandemic, this was always launched as kind of a virtual program where STEAM professionals would be able to engage with students and educators, but there was also an in-person component where we were looking to partner with many of our local businesses and corporations in which they were able to engage in some of these schools, school discussions and activities in person. Once COVID hit and our district became remote and still is remote, we will be going into a hybrid model, hopefully in April. This program quickly shifts into a remote model. So the pilot launched in September of 2020 in partnership with our workforce development working group. It was piloted in 10 schools in the city, and we really targeted learners in grades 3 through 12. The goal of the program, again, was to increase interest and knowledge of STEAM careers through virtual engagement with STEAM professionals. We wanted to expand the STEAM pipeline programs beyond the academic impact and really go into understanding how people, how do you get into these careers? What leads you into these careers? What are some of the academic and also social emotional kind of skill sets one needs to really engage in these various professions? And we also wanted to build stronger partnerships between educators, their schools, and our local businesses and companies in the city. Next slide, please. So the need came out of several conversations. On the school side, we in many virtual conversations with some of our principals and STEAM leads, we were hearing how can we better embed knowledge about career pathways into our existing programs. So there were a lot of out of school time programs working with our schools to provide everything from conservation, wildlife, biomedical. We have several engineering programs. The content part in terms of connected to the curriculum was there, but in terms of just exposing students to the workforce side was lacking. Schools also asked, how can we connect better with our local businesses and corporations? And as many of you may know, sometimes there's it's difficult to really to really connect with some of the local businesses and corporations. As a teacher, who do you call? Who do you reach out to? What's the first step? How do you build that partnership and then sustain it? Some of our workforce partners, on the other end of that conversation, our workforce partners at the coalition table spoke to us about, well, we do want to engage our employees in these opportunities, but who do we go to and where do we start? And how do we connect to impactful programs that really utilizes our expertise? We had corporations speaking to us about interest in starting employee volunteerism programs. And, so that meant if there's something that we're able to participate in within the community, where do we go to access that information? So we thought that was very interesting, because on the one hand, you had a sector that was having a hard time connecting with our private sector partners, and then on the other end, you just had folks that were trying to just know where they should go to, where could they go to participate in impactful kind of educational community-based activities. So this is where the coalition kind of bridged that connect and developed this effort. Next slide, please. So the first thing we had to do was to really conduct a few exploratory conversations. We couldn't just launch a district kind of wide virtual program without discussing it with a few of our partners, as well as within the district, as well as some of our community-based partners and some of our corporate partners. The conversation was led by the co-chairs of our workforce development group, Schools That Can and Empower. They represent the co-chairs of our workforce development group. They have been really pivotal in hosting a lot of these discussions. The program lives now within the Office of Science at the Board of Education at the district level. Ms. Tierney, Kathleen Tierney, the lead of the Office of Science, has been pivotal in really legitimizing this program and speaking with her colleagues within the district about the importance of this effort. We spoke with a few departments within the district, the Career and Technical Education, Office of Math and Arts, Office of Student Leadership. We spoke with some of our workforce alliance groups within the city. The Newark Alliance is a huge leader within the city in terms of building workforce development efforts and collaborations. They support the Live Local initiative within the city. We also connected with the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce Foundation. We had a representative on our steering committee, and two of our major corporate partners headquartered here in the city of Newark, Audible and Panasonic, who have been really long-time partners within the collaboration and thought leaders within the community in general. The conversations went well, and the program was seen as important and vital for our learners, and so we moved forward. Next slide, please. The work of the program, we started to circulate flyers. We emailed out the information for how schools can request a STEAM professional. We also leveraged the Office of Science to help to circulate this to all of the teachers, as well as speak on the topic through their WebEx kind of monthly meetings. The schools and their OST program providers are able to submit requests through a Google form that we created. Schools That Can and Empower helped to identify the STEAM professionals that aligned with the request that came in. And the platform that is being used for the program is WebEx, because the district has adopted WebEx for the entire remote period. So many of these virtual discussions were done during the school day, so they were required to use the WebEx platform. We'll be considering if discussions and virtual sessions are done after the school period. We're looking into other platforms that may be suitable, but right now the program runs through the WebEx platform. We also developed student and teacher surveys that were distributed after each session. Next slide, please. So just a few outcomes, preliminary outcomes for the Bridges to STEAM program. We've held about 6 sessions to date. We've had about 320 students participate. That number is probably close to 450 right now. Our goal is 600 students by the end of this academic year. 80% of the students that have participated are were from high school, and 20% roughly are middle school students. We have a lot of requests coming from our high schools. Some of the professions and sessions that have been hosted, we've held discussions with everything from forensic scientists to food scientists, which was a great discussion in partnership with Mars. We had an amazing young scientist speak about the creation of M&Ms. As you can imagine, our young people were extremely excited about what it takes to make the different M&M colors and how exactly is it that they melt in your mouth, you know, when you eat them. So that was a very, very exciting conversation. We've had our high schools, our biomedical program at one of our high schools invited an anesthesiologist from Hackensack Memorial Hospital to speak to his work and also his passion, what brought him into that profession. So we've been extremely excited to really kind of see how the excitement and the questions that come out of these discussions from our young people really go further from just the academic requirements to what brought you into this profession. You know, what do I have? What type of person what type of person in terms of my level of motivation do I need to get into this profession and to stay in this profession? And even most importantly, you know, I'm always excited when the speakers speak to their background and students see that not everyone came from a privileged background, right? And not everyone came from an easy background, but they still made it through. So those are these conversations, these virtual discussions has been very impactful, and we're really excited to see them move forward. Next slide, please. So these are just some really, in the student surveys, we asked some general questions about after the sessions are held, the teachers send out surveys. These are anonymous. We've received from the number of students that's participated so far, about 20% of the surveys have come back to us. So in the area, we asked, you know, when they're asked, I have learned something new today about a STEAM job. We have roughly about 80% of students saying yes to that question. We asked them, I would like to learn more about STEAM jobs, and we have about like 56% of the students replying yes to that. We have about, it's hard to see on my slide here, but we have a small proportion saying about 20% saying no, and some saying I don't know. So we had to keep this particular survey a little simple because of the range of age groups that we're sending this out to. Students were asked, I would like to participate in more STEAM activities and programs moving forward. And we had about 51% of students saying yes to that. So we're really excited to see how we can leverage this program with other efforts going on. Next slide, please. We also conducted a teacher survey, and this allowed for just a few of our teachers that really request these virtual sessions to help us speak to what are some of their outcomes. When asked, I thought the speaker was engaging. We have really over 50%, about 60% of student teachers strongly agreeing to that. We also asked, were your students, my students expressing increased interest in a STEAM job? We had about 80% of the teacher respondents agreeing to that. And then I will include job exploration into my classwork moving forward. We had about 80% of teachers responding strongly agreeing to that statement. There were other questions in the survey that included, does this increase your partnerships with any particular with the businesses and corporations that you've connected with? We're very interested in seeing how this expands the school's partnerships, as well as just expose our teachers to other opportunities and resources out there. But we continue to try and attract and of course garner more surveys from teachers, because we're trying to of course better the program as this goes along. Next slide, please. And lastly, some of our next steps is just really identifying funding to support a more comprehensive platform. We've looked at other national platforms that try to that conducts these types of virtual discussions, such as NetPris. As I mentioned, we want to gather more thoughts from speakers, really understanding what the STEAM professionals thought of this. Where can we align more and build even stronger partnerships? And we also want to align this particular program to mentorship, internships, apprenticeship opportunities. The coalition does not want to replicate any existing opportunities out there, but we do want to make sure that from a conversation, hopefully a child is interested in a mentor in that field, or they're interested in an internship or apprenticeship in that field. So we are really just that initial bridge to the virtual kind of bridge to hopefully a passion and a career that they're looking to go into. Thank you. I think that's all I have. Yep.
Thank you, Maku. Thank you so much. I want to give a couple of minutes for questions, and I know that we have one question that really crosses both presentations in terms of Pavi and Maku, is in terms of expenses and fees. So Pavi, I guess the question is sort of what is your fee structure, and Maku, how did you fund the project? So maybe go to Pavi first.
So the fees are based on the programs we offer, but we also, if the student is unable to say they don't have a resource like a computer or unable to pay the fee, we also provide scholarship opportunities for them and find out the resources for that. But it's all based on the programs that they do. And when we partner with out of school, like the family success centers, a lot of times, we are part of the grant process. We are on their grants too. So.
Okay, and then Maku.
Yeah. So right now, there's no budget for this program. The Schools That Can and Empower, they are the co-chairs of the Workforce Development Group. They've really put in volunteer time to help to support the day-to-day of this program, as well as myself as the project lead to just help to manage a lot of the data collection part, as well as really exposing more schools to this opportunity. are in the process of writing several grants to help support this program specifically, and sharing that really with some of our corporate partners that have participated.
Yeah, and I'll add, this really shows, that program, the Bridges to STEAM, shows the power of a network and, being able to use your network and leverage their resources. I know that I'm able to provide some speakers if asked, and also, the volunteer time that has gone on. And I know Elaine Zundel at Rutgers obviously was helpful with the survey and the evaluation side. So it's really the benefit of working as an ecosystem for sure. Let's see, do we have any other questions? I think we answered the questions that I see in the box. I want to see if anybody has a hand raised, if anybody would like to ask a question. I guess I had one question, and maybe if all, unless somebody else raises their hand, maybe just hit on all the panelists. If Ralph, you're still with us, maybe if I can start with you, is, if you could kind of go back in time in this work, is there something that you would change or that you would have done differently in this process?
Wow, the crystal ball question. That's a really tough one to answer because a lot of these things we weren't anticipating, just like most projects, so you don't know what you need until you need it. I think just speaking to what you just said with partnerships, a lot of what we were able to accomplish is because of the partnerships we had formed with vendors, with community advocates, with other districts. So, relying on your resources, relying on your partnerships to be, mutually beneficial and support one another as we navigate through this. So I think, grabbing a hold of that sooner and not only keeping a pulse on parents, students, community members, but also your partners, checking in with them. All of us are so focused on what we have to get done day to day, and we're so overwhelmed by all of the things coming at us, that we sometimes lose track of that human side of just to check in with your partners to say, hey, how are things going for you?
Yeah, that's great. Pavi, what about you?
I agree with Ralph. I mean, I don't know what was the beginning actually, because it's just been changing the course has been changing every other minute, especially given the nature of the programs we offer as after school, right? Like we have after school program workshops in different formats. So I don't even know how we began, but I just knew that we had to be innovative and creative. And this is the problem solving that we are teaching. So we better be prepared to solve and face the problems ourselves. And I think overwhelming. It was very overwhelming at the beginning just to see how much of people, like how many resources were put out, and how many workshops, and so many of them were being flooded. But I think definitely being in the partnership, the aspect that Ralph was talking about, just having your partners in sync with you, and working with the school districts and other higher ed institutions definitely help you in making the decisions better.
And Maku, what about you?
Yeah, I would agree with both of my colleagues. I think for us, for this particular program, we started off with a really big idea, and a very expensive idea. And I think when COVID hit, we had to be very realistic about the cost of doing something like this for our schools and for some of the programs that would want to participate. So I'm actually glad that we backtracked and said, let's just pilot this with a simple platform, something that folks they don't have to pay for right now, and let's just see if it works. And plus, there were so many changes. There's been so many changes in the past couple of months. I'm glad we started off at a small scale, and now that we see that it's favorable amongst our schools and being utilized by our learners, we can then scale it up. But this is the cost burden and just the would have, I'm glad we, COVID really forced us to kind of think about not putting those types of burdens on schools and parents and our folks, considering everything happening nationally right now, especially, with folks struggling economically. So I think it was a great, I'm glad we approached it in that way.
Yeah. And I think, I think the ecosystem, as everyone touched on, having that infrastructure in place when COVID hit was certainly helpful. And so that's why we do encourage, the development of an ecosystem and working with your partners so that connective tissue is there before, you're asking for support. Because once you have that relationship and that trust and that credibility, it definitely makes a stronger case for support, any kind of support, in kind, financial advice, anything like that. I just want to thank our presenters so much. That was incredible to see you guys really walk through the challenges that I've seen you deal with, and do so with such precision and knowledge. Just two, I think, closing slides, Shirley, if you want to move on, is just to announce to everybody, if you're not already familiar with our website at the STEM Pathways Network, we do have resources there for you. You can certainly use that QR code to gain access to them. And we're looking to always build this out. So if you have any suggestions or thoughts, please let us know. But we encourage you to kind of jump on the website and check out things. And last, I'll say that the next slide, Shirley, is our updates. Shirley does a terrific job with getting out information through those updates. I know we're inundated with email, but this, I think, is a really valuable resource. So if you're not already getting our updates, please use that QR code to sign up, or you can certainly go to our website. And then I think we're just going to close out with the last slide. We do have a quick survey for people to jump onto, but we will send that out via email as well. If you guys have any questions at all, you could always feel free to reach out to me at kkcase@rdnj.org. And I just want to thank everyone for being with us this afternoon and look forward to being with you guys again in person soon. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.